Hi, everyone, and welcome to Get Hired Live. I'm Andrew Seaman, your host and the senior news editor for job searches and careers at LinkedIn News. So, thank you all for coming once again to our conversation here. So, as I always do, I want to kick off today by asking you to introduce yourselves in the comments. I see a bunch of you doing that already. I think I saw Andrea from Florida, Kelly from New Jersey, Franz from Geneva, Bina from New York, David from Texas, and Com from Michigan. And I know we have a bunch of other people, Dolores from Texas, in the comments. So keep introducing yourselves and tell us what your job search is like. Maybe you want to move into a different field. Maybe you were in aviation and you want to go into accounting. So just keep those introductions coming, and we'll talk about all you need to know about your job search in just a little bit. And then what I want you to do too, as I always suggest, is connect with each other. So maybe you know someone or you see someone who is in an area you want to move to, or in your area, or in a field that you want to go into. Connect with each other and talk about your job search. So maybe you don't have all the connections that you could have. You can never have enough connections. The other person can help you with that. So be sure to keep talking, keep connecting. The key to a good job search is always to form connections, and what better way to start than right now. So be sure to do that. We have a great show for you today, and we're going to be answering your questions. So once you get done introducing yourselves, make sure that you are putting your job search questions into the comments, and we'll be taking them in just a little bit. And we have a really great guest today. So I want to bring her onto the screen right now. It's Stephanie Heath, who is the founder of Soul Work and Six Figures. Welcome, Stephanie.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, yeah. And, before the show, we were talking a little bit about salary negotiation. And I think this is something that a lot of people struggle with, because they're usually sort of not blindsided, but that question is often on applications about, what is your expected starting salary? So, why is it important for people to go into a job search knowing, their so-called market value for what they should be expecting?
Oh gosh, knowing the salary even before your first interview is giving you the ammunition to negotiate a high salary, or even a higher salary than the company anticipated. So it's basically your ammunition in the process. And we could talk about how you would go through that process as well.
Yeah, definitely. So, how would you suggest, if I was searching for a job, how would you suggest that I figure out how much I should be expecting at a starting salary at a company?
Right. So we're all familiar with websites like PayScale and Salary.com and Glassdoor. It's important for you to use those websites and to filter for job title, your seniority level, location, etc. But outside of that, you want to utilize places that are bringing on crowdsourced information. So Quora, Reddit, just treat it as if you are, someone that isn't in a relationship with someone anymore, and you're curious about what their life is like. You really go through that research process. Do the same thing with your salary, because it will pay off in dividends. So just see if you can find crowdsourced information. You could even type in things like, what is an analyst? What's a pay band an analyst can expect to make at XYZ company? You can also look at competitors and see what, that title and years of experience would be making, and just really, really dive in and dig deep. Take all of the information that you get and sort of accumulate and create a median. And then also, you can also be in Facebook groups or use Facebook groups and other groups to see if you can ask someone in there. So for example, for me, maybe I join Ladies in Tech or Women in Tech, or, something that's, maybe some sort of minority group, and just ask the question to the group, hey, I have this interview coming up and I'm just trying to understand what I can ask. Does anyone have any information about what this title can be making? And you'll get people giving you real-time responses with, real-time data. So it's a really important process, and it just makes the negotiation so much easier when you have all of that research to back the number that you're asking for.
Definitely. And especially I want to underline what you said about sort of talking to other people, because I think a lot of people were raised sort of, you don't talk about money, you don't talk about salary, things like that. So people sometimes get very nervous about that. But really, I think people are a lot more open to it nowadays. And I think there's been so much discussion about salary transparency that people are sort of saying, oh, okay, yeah, I will, tell you a range of what, I make or what I think people in my position make. So I think that is really an important step. And then also, another thing is to, know that there are actually steps in a lot of states where they're no longer allowed to ask you what you used to make. So, you obviously have to check what your local regulations are. But I know that there's a lot of states that are doing that because they don't want you to sort of be burdened by your previous salary. So maybe your last employer underpaid you. That way, the next employer can actually say, "Oh, you were only making 40,000 at your last job. Then I'm not going to pay you your 60,000 that I was expecting. I'm going to pay you, 40,000." So I think that's important to know too.
Yeah, definitely. Don't allow them to ask that question. You can even have, sort of a befuzzled, look on your face and just, you know, I'm not really wanting to answer that at this time, or it's not important, and you can feel free to share what the budget is. And then something that I've noticed too is that sometimes we are afraid to give the first number. Just I guess bank on what your personality is. So if you're someone that's really direct, you're senior in your career, you don't have to play games and try to see, well, what's the budget? You can just, as long as you're well researched, share that first number. And if you're someone that is more soft spoken and you are a little bit more afraid, you can say that, there's so much variance in the market, I'm not quite sure, what would you recommend? Or, what is the budget for this role? That works too. So there's never just sort of like a cut and dry cookie cutter way about salary negotiation. You can get what you want by owning your own personality, if that makes sense.
Definitely, I think that's a really good suggestion. And while before we start taking questions, I want to reintroduce everyone. And I'm Andrew. I'm from LinkedIn and the host to Get Hired Live, which you're watching right now. And we have Stephanie Heath with us, who is the founder of Soul Work and Six Figures. And we have so many people joining us. We have Cindy from Nevada, Ahmet from Turkey, Carla from Colorado, Stephen from Scotland, Leonard from New Jersey, Angelica from Canada, Io from North Carolina, Ziva from Canada, Daniel from Texas, and Sheila from Washington, D.C. So we have so many people joining us from all over, and we're going to start taking your questions. So be sure to get your questions into the stream, and we'll be taking them in just a bit. So Stephanie, I wanted to keep with the salary thing because we have a question here from Ardian. And Ardian asked, how do you negotiate a higher salary with the vast pool of candidates out there? And I think a lot of people are worried that, the economy isn't in great shape right now. There's so many people looking for work. How do you sort of go into a job and fight for a higher salary?
Right. So this doesn't sound the best. And I've been there, started out career contractor, and come to find out I could have, been making $10 to $15 more than what I accepted, because I had that fear of, well, what if they renege on the offer? But what I love to share with my clients is that when you are a professional, you have to put your CEO hat on, and you have to embody what a CEO is. And, a CEO is responsible for an organization, their profit, they can have feelings, etc. But at the end of the day, they really have to protect their interests. And so when you think about your life and you think about, that Disney vacation that you want to take, or, that school that you really want to send your child to, but you kind of, take the lower option because you don't have the funds right now, you need to remind yourself of this. So some of the tips that I share with my clients is to have sticky notes, or someone that will remind you to advocate for yourself, whether this is your spouse or someone, so that when you get on the call with maybe a persuasive recruiter that's really friendly and sweet, or someone that's more hard-nosed and they're like really demanding, that you can stick to your guns. And so I'm just going to go through the process. This may be long, and I'm not even quite sure if this is answering the exact question, but so typically the first call, that first interview for a recruiter, one of our jobs, if probably a third of it, is to negotiate. Like, we're very concerned with how much you're looking for. We definitely want to sell you on the role and get you excited about the role, but I want to say 50% to 40% of our job to understand how much you cost and to get you in line with our budget. So on the first call, you should be extremely well researched. I do recommend that you tack on, depending on your years of seniority, maybe 5K to even 15K of the top of the range that you can ask for, just so that you have a little bit of room to negotiate when the negotiation actually happens. And so, for example, let's say you're making 60 to 75K, maybe you can tack on an extra 5 to 2K, probably 5K. And if you're making anywhere from 100 to 120, you could do the same. And then maybe 120, 150 upwards, 10K, etc. No one will blink an eye. And so you go through your interview process, and then, the second, third stage happens. Typically, that's when a recruiter is touching base with you again to see how your interviews are going. Usually they, if it's a good company, but usually we're really curious about this. We want to know how you're doing, etc. But we're also using this information to kind of figure out, well, do they still have will they have a bunch of offers at the end? And if so, maybe I can, use that to negotiate them even lower than what I initially would. So the second time you speak to the recruiter, probably around after the third interview, that's when they will touch base with you, ask you how many companies you're interviewing with, how's it going, which one do you like the most. They'll maybe even ask you to share the name. You can decide to be vague or not, and that'll kind of depend on your personality and the brand nameness of the companies you're in contention with. So after that conversation, usually after the final round interview or right before it, is when the recruiter or anyone who's been managing the process with you will check back in with you and say, hey, we've been talking to you for a while now. We're really excited about you, and we're, kind of considering, what the outcome will be. Just want to check back in with you and to check in and see if this is what you're still looking for. And at that point, depending on how many other interviews you have happening, what stage they're in, and how interested you are in the company, you can either say, yep, this is still what I'm looking for, or, if they want to have you take something lower, then you can reiterate that this is what you'll be looking for. And so I always recommend that candidates blame it on the other interviews that they have happening versus their master's degree, their years of experience, or what they need as a person. Just because in a recruiter's mind, when I hear that they're interviewing with another company that can potentially offer them more, that's my impetus to get my game together, to go back to my VP of HR and trying to get more on the budget, talk to the hiring manager to see if they can, get a little bit more, while also, playing that middle person to see if you'll be able to come down a little bit. So, hopefully that makes sense. But so depending on wherever you're going, you choose to go there. But and the last bit here is that conversation is a final time you should be negotiating. After you have that conversation after the final round, where it's not a verbal offer yet, where it's just like, hey, et cetera, that's when the recruiter will go back to the team and get approvals. So when you try to change the number that you're looking for after that, that's when, you could be looked at as someone that's greedy, et cetera.
Yeah. And also I think something else that's important, because, in your experience, a recruiter is trained to talk about salary. Yeah. So, I think we had a question here from Bina, who basically said, I'm afraid asking for too high a salary will scare away job offers. But that's really on the recruiter to sort of come back and say, okay, what is, your low, maybe we could work something out. So it shouldn't be that you're too afraid to talk about this. It's sort of, you have to be open to the conversation, right?
Absolutely. And you'll be surprised. I've seen, people with 2 years of experience asking for the world and receiving it. So just take that risk. It sounds scary, but that's when having that advocate in your corner that will give you that shot of courage, and to look back at that sticky note and to see what's important to you, what's really important, because you're the CEO of your life and no one's going to hand you. We're definitely going to want you to be happy as an employer. But, it's up to you to really stand up for yourself and to take that risk. And again, like Andrew said, we're recruiters, right? So we'll probably say, no, that's out of the range. And, that's when you can massage it a little bit more. But you'll know if it's way above what they can pay on that first call.
Yeah. And, and hopefully everyone still continuing to put questions into the stream. We're going to be taking more in just a second, but I want to quickly give a shout out to some other people who are watching. We have Art from California, Judy and Patrick from Pennsylvania, my home state, Eula from Alabama, Patricia from Georgia, and Wendy from Minnesota, where I think she said it was -8 today. So I hope you're staying warm, Wendy. That sounds awful. But for the next question, I wanted to take one from Steve, who basically is saying, after you send a resume and cover letter, how long do you wait until following up? And I think this is something that a lot of people get anxiety over, because when you submit a resume and cover letter, you don't want to pester them, but you also want sort of some follow-up. So what is your advice after someone does apply? What should they do?
Yeah. So Steve, if you're applying to a large company, maybe 150 employees or more, I don't really recommend following up. You can, if you found the hiring manager or someone that's likely going to be the hiring manager on LinkedIn, you could connect with them and write just a short note in the connection note area on LinkedIn. Otherwise, I would use that energy to apply to other positions, just because if it's a large company, it's a yes or no, and we don't know what's going on in the back end. And at least with my clients, we've seen more success just being focused on the next thing. So even just following up to after a rejection and trying to understand why, just when I was a recruiter, I want to say 99% of the time I didn't divulge why we didn't move forward with a candidate for, just HR reasons, right? So, in my opinion, I wouldn't really, go through that process. And then the I guess alternative would be if it's a smaller company, like a startup or something like that, or a company that doesn't have an open role, but you pitched yourself to them, you email them, sent your cover letter and resume, and say, hey, I don't see an open role here, but I could, blah, 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 then, it would make sense for you to go ahead and follow up with them. And in that case, then I would recommend 3 days. Excuse my language here, but yeah, hopefully that helps you.
Great. Well, yeah, and we had, our friend Wendy in Minnesota, where it's freezing right now, but she does have competition. I did see someone, Heidi. I don't know where you're from, Heidi. You said it was negative 14. So let us know if anyone could top negative 14 Fahrenheit. Hopefully not, but maybe someone can. But Wendy is saying that she is currently fun employed, which, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that's usually, you choose basically to be out of work for a little while to maybe work on other projects. I know a few people who've done this before, where they say, hey, listen, I don't need to find a job right away. And she wants to know if there's any suggestions for someone looking for leadership roles. So maybe you're taking some time off to collect yourself, figure out what you want to do. What should someone in that position do?
And this is, I think Wendy's the one that's in the cold.
Yes,
what is the name of the person asking this question?
Wendy.
Okay.
It is Wendy, our friend in the cold.
Hey, Wendy. Awesome. So this is a great time for you, for a lot of people too, but I would work on your story. So I would, first of all, look at your LinkedIn profile and really spend time on it. Use that summary section to talk about who you are, your skills, the career that you've built, who you are as a person, your values, what you're looking for next, and just kind of pour your heart out, and then have someone edit it a little bit to make it a bit succinct and put that into your summary. And then if you do have, you took a pause and you have like a work gap, then you can go ahead and add work gap to your LinkedIn profile at the top, and just maybe title it sabbatical. Maybe add any courses that you took or reading or any travel. Just use it to, I guess, knock out all of those first round questions that someone would ask you. So what were you doing this time? Why? Who are you as a person? And then I would recommend that you pitch yourself more and really lean on your network. And this could be people that you know, but also, are there any organizations that are really interesting to you where it's like, gosh, this would be amazing. And if that's the case, then try to find their leadership team. And if it's a company that has more than 150 employees, for example, then you can maybe reach out to 3 people on that team, and send a really authentic, genuine message. Someone like you could probably benefit from LinkedIn Premium, so that you have the space to write a thoughtful message, and just say, hey, this company stood out to me for XYZ reason. Recently I took some time away because of XYZ, and now I am selectively looking to join another organization to do XYZ. And you stood out because, and so that's where you want to talk about why you chose them to reach out to, and then pitch yourself. And for me, I really lean more to high volume. So if you can do that, really spend the time, have some tea, and make the mood really nice so that you're writing. It's kind of like magic what you're writing. If you can maybe send a message to one person a day, or, maybe 3 people a day. I think that would probably be the max before it turns into spam message territory. I think you're setting yourself up to at least hear back from 20%, maybe even 30%, since you are in a leadership position, and typically those folks tend to respond and at least want to continue the relationship, whatever happens. And so just celebrate where you are. I want to say 80% of the people on the market right now, or just even people that are employed, they're thinking about transitioning into something different. They're asking themselves the hard questions of, who am I? Is this still what I want to be doing? COVID kind of did that to us. So I think you're in a great spot, and sending you so much love and, all the warmth from the East Coast, because I know you're cold.
Yeah, no, there's definitely a few people who keep challenging it. I think Toronto said with wind chill is -18, so I don't know if we want to give them the prize or not. Texas said it's cold at 28, and which is cold, but I don't think they have any chance of winning right now.
No.
Yeah, definitely. So we were talking about someone who's fun employed, but what about people who have gaps in their resume? Maybe they're returning to the workforce. Maybe they were laid off and they haven't been able to find work. We have a question from Eula, which basically says, what does someone in that position do with, a large gap on their resume?
Yeah, so you can lean on your story, what you've been up to, what it sounds so basic, but what learnings you've acquired since then. So, for example, for me, I was really burnt out at one point in my career, and I went to Japan and I stayed there for some time, and honestly, I felt like I defrosted. I was kind of, very burnt out. And so when I came back, I shared that story on my profile, just, and then in interviews, I shared that as well. I was extremely burnt out, and granted, you do that to yourself, so it's no fault to the organization. But lean into being extremely vulnerable on your LinkedIn profile, because that's how you get employers and hiring managers to fall in love with you even before you get on the call. And that's how you get people to take a chance on you. And then for you folks that do have the work gaps, again, this is where the networking and the making friends online and talking to people and messaging people is going to be even more important. And then also strategically, are you someone that did a few side projects on the side? Were they pro bono? Were they for your daughter's Girl Scout cookie group or your church or something like that? That's all work that you can add to your LinkedIn profile. So let's say that you did a few website design projects for some friends. I would go ahead and create a LinkedIn company page, and it's actually easier to make a company page than a personal page, and throw up a really nice logo that speaks to you. You could use canva.com, and then just list out the projects that you worked on, pro bono or not, and then boom, you have experience. You can also, if you'd like, although if you have those sort of projects, you don't need to, but you can also have a section underneath the bullets where you're sharing, in addition to the project work, I went to Bali, I, read 18 books a month. I, spent a lot more time with my daughter, and this is how you get hired. So.
Yes, and I think that is such helpful information. And Wendy from the last question, the fun employed person, said thank you for your advice. And we have a question here from Linda, which I think is really good, and it's about how many years of experience compares to not having a degree. So, people who, especially if they've been in the workforce for a while, they may not have a degree, but they have a lot of experience in the workforce in a specific industry. So how do you suggest someone like that navigate today's hiring environment?
So if I understand the question correctly, you're missing a degree that's a requirement on a job requisition, but you have years of experience to speak to, or some sort of
Yes, I
variation
think
of
that's
that.
it.
I will say that questions like these sometimes are slightly frustrating, only because, in my opinion, I think you can sell yourself into any position. So a lot of times when candidates are kind of nervous about their corporate worth or their worth, they'll lean on getting all the certifications in the world, or really hold strong onto, well, I don't have that PhD and I don't have this XYZ. And I found that there are very few jobs that really require that stuff. So for example, maybe a data scientist, there'll be some hard requirements in terms of just education. But a lot of times it's just, I think, sometimes fair. And just proof of this is that, again, I've interviewed a lot of people, and usually it's the millennials and the Gen Zs that'll have that confidence to just interview into these roles and get them without having the quote unquote prerequisites to even be there. So maybe you can take a look at or join some professional groups of people in that field that you're targeting and ask them, say, hey, I have this many years of experience, but I don't have the degree. Have you found that it's been an issue, or what would you suggest? And you'll find yourself getting some advice from people in that field. But just from a recruiter's perspective, and not knowing what your function is, I would say I wouldn't use that to have a reason to worry about your job search. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, I think that does. And I think people should remember that, a lot of the largest companies right now have done away with college degree requirements. So really the leading companies in the world have said, that this is not a deal breaker for us. We're going to look at the whole person. So I think that's really important to remember. So maybe if you're getting frustrated, you're being told that you don't have a degree or something like that, just remember that there are so many opportunities out there where people are saying, hey, listen, the degree doesn't mean that you're unqualified or that you can't do this job. So just keep that in mind. And then we have a question here too, which is about career switches. And Teresa wants to know if you need to create different resumes for different positions. So I think that, this sort of applies to everyone. They're applying for different jobs. What is your advice for Teresa, where it's sort of you have to, maybe do some different resumes, maybe you're applying across industries. What's your suggestion for her?
Sure. So Teresa, I have a great answer for you, but I am just going to caveat the last answer that I gave, and that is if you're applying to government roles or any sort of city roles, usually they have the cut and dry. And then for some technical roles, comp sci degree is really important. So, and then for you, Teresa, I would maybe stick to 3 resumes, and we'll just use the example of, let's say you're targeting project manager roles, business analyst roles, and like a data analyst position, then you'd probably want to create targeted resumes for all 3. But keep in mind, your LinkedIn profile is, in my opinion, just as important as your resume. Your resume is sort of just like that fact checker document. I don't know if it's just because I have a shorter attention span, but I have hired across industry, investment banks, tech startups, Amazon, Sony. And so your LinkedIn profile is the place that I go to first. I mean, I may scan your resume, but it's just a lot more readable. So if you have 3 variations of your resume and then your LinkedIn profile has, like, you call yourself those 3 different things and it's kind of confusing, you may not get as many interview requests as someone that commits to maybe 2 at most. So ask yourself, what do I want to be doing out of these 3? Yes, I could be doing all 3, but what do I really love? What can I give myself maybe a month or 3 weeks to really go crazy and target in terms of a job title, and then brand your LinkedIn profile for those 2. So highlighting those skills, those your experience, being strategic in where you're putting the bullet points, and then being strategic with the headline, calling yourself those 2 roles, and then starting and applying for maybe 3 weeks and seeing what the result will be. But that would be my suggestion for you. So.
I think that's great. And then, we have time for, I think, one more question. We have several people who are asking about negotiation as recent graduates. And I think this is a tough one because there are so many people who are graduating or have graduated within the past year who are entering a really rough job market. What's your suggestion for them to, first of all, get their foot in the door at companies, but also to sort of get their value? So what is your suggestion for someone if you were graduating this year, or you're a recent graduate, how would you go about having those conversations?
Perfect. So it sounds like it's your application strategy we'll talk about, and negotiation. So your application strategy should be to, for every single position that you apply to, message 1 to 3 recruiters at that company. And also, I would be applying to anywhere from 7 to 10 roles a day, 5 days a week, taking 2 days off for mental health. And when you're applying to these positions, try to make them targeted. So don't apply to more than 2 titles, and make sure that your LinkedIn profile looks good for those 2 titles. And so how you find recruiters is just you go to the company page, then go to their people, and then once you're in the people page, just type in recruiter or talent acquisition talent acquisition, you would say specialist or not, and then human resources. And you should be able to populate someone on that team. And then, whoever looks friendly to you, right? Just connect with them. You could send a short note in the connection request saying, hey, my name is XYZ. I applied to XYZ role today. I like to recommend that you say today or tomorrow, or yesterday, because as a recruiter, if you say I applied to this role, I'm just going to assume that I saw your resume and I passed on you. So if you say today or yesterday, maybe I haven't seen your resume yet. Just checking to see if this role is still available. Please have a great day. That sort of message has been working for my clients. And then in addition to the 1 to 3 recruiters that you're contacting for every single position that you're applying to, 5 days a week, taking 2 days off for mental health, 10 positions a day. Also see if you can find someone that's in management. So maybe you're a data analyst and you see someone that has a manager, data analyst, manager title. You can connect with them and you would send another message super similar. So, hi, my name is XYZ. I applied to XYZ role yesterday. Do you know who would be the best person to forward my profile to? And so saying, do you know who would be the best person to forward my profile is just an easy ask. What usually happens is the hiring manager will forward it to me, the recruiter, just in advance, and they may not even respond to the message, or they'll say, yeah, XYZ is the HR, good luck. Or they'll message the recruiter, hey, this great person messaged me, schedule an interview. Don't get offended if you don't see a lot of responses from that. I think a 30% response rate is good. If you're getting less than that, then that means your profile doesn't look good enough for that role. You have to do some personal branding work. But that strategy really works. It's more high volume. And it's also making sure that these people are seeing your profile, because an applicant tracking system where we collect all the resumes can be a black hole. And I would say recruiters kind of have a bad taste in their mouth for applications that we receive. One, we receive so many, but sometimes upwards of 60% of the applicants that apply aren't a good fit for the role. So a lot of the time, recruiters are hunting for candidates. So we're looking for people that are already employed, and we're looking to poach them from their companies. So we spend a lot of time on LinkedIn and in our inbox. So you sending those messages will increase your interview requests astronomically, really significantly. So that's going to be your application strategy. You don't have to keep track of any of that. You just need to do it every day, just shoot it like a gun and just move on, right? And then in terms of the negotiation bit, especially for a newer hire, again, I've seen so many young folks just come in with all the confidence and, ask for what they're looking for and get it. So for you, it's going to be really important to just mock interview with your friends, record yourself answering typical interview questions. LinkedIn has a ton of resources, maybe about 10, maybe record yourself twice. If you're an ESL candidate, then maybe, spend 1 hour practicing your interview answers, maybe 3 times a week, just so that you're comfortable answering normal questions and you're not rambling too much. And then, embodying the fact that if you got invited to interview, that means you're a good fit. So again, I mentioned that most of the applicants that we receive aren't a good fit. So if you're on the phone with a recruiter, they're usually extremely busy. They've had 4 interviews that day. So there's a reason why you're there, and we are already assuming that you're a good fit. And it's usually when you feel that, they're going to ask me about this experience, and I don't have this, and that's when we pick up on that. So I guess what I'm saying is that confidence will get you at least to the second round. So just try to embody that, and you have the application strategy and the prerequisites to the negotiation.
Yeah, I think that is such a good roadmap. And, like you said, I think one of the key traits, especially when you said the 2 days off, is to sort of have the resilience and try and bake that into it as an, entry level person or a recent graduate, because you may have more trouble getting your footing in the workforce, but, it'll happen. So just have sort of that wherewithal. So I think that's really wonderful advice.
Yeah.
And thank you so much, Stephanie. It was such a wonderful conversation. I think everyone got so much out of it, and I hope everyone was looking to the bottom of the screen, watching your lower third be flashed, and checking out your LinkedIn profile.
Awesome. It was wonderful. Definitely reach out. I love talking to you guys, and I'd love to help in any way that I can, but good luck, and know that this moment is a really good moment to be on the job market, even if you're reading articles that say the opposite.
Definitely, there is a job for everyone. Thank you so much, Stephanie, and thank you to everyone out there who has been watching. We have these shows regularly, and Tuesday we have a show. My colleague Caroline Fairchild will be here, and she will be talking about the queen bee syndrome, and that is about the causes and fixes of workplace rivalry. She'll sit down with two experts who studied the issue extensively and get to the root of the problems and to the tools you need to fix them. And there's really not a problem here because I'm the queen bee. So that is how it works here. And then next Friday on Get Hired Live, because we have the show every Friday, we have BJ Fogg, who's the director of Stanford's Behavior Design Lab. He's also the best-selling author of Tiny Habits. So we'll be talking to him about changing up your routine, maybe fixing habits that you have developed as a job seeker, and how to sort of improve your routine. So be sure to tune in for that. And my producers will be dropping the link into the comments. So just click remind me and you'll get a notification when we go live. So until next week, please stay safe. You could only be a good candidate. You could only get hired if you're healthy and well enough to do so. So that means you have to wear a mask and follow your local health recommendations. So until next week, stay safe and best of luck.